Minecraft is a great game, amazing really, but it hasn't had the greatest influence on indie developers since its release. Through the 2010s, thousands if not more open-world survival sandbox games were created, some better than others, and a common game mechanic that keeps on popping up is the dreaded crafting system. In this video, I want to explore the game design functionality of crafting systems, trying to figure out when it's a good idea and hopefully manage to cope with the fact that I decided to add one into my own game. So what exactly is a crafting system at a fundamental level? It's generally an interface that allows players to turn some collection of items into one or many different, hopefully useful ones. Unlike a store, we generally exchange multiple items, not just gold or some currency. We may combine wood and stone to create a pickaxe, for example. So the player can create useful tools with whatever they collect as they explore. That seems like a reasonable design, encouraging and rewarding exploration. No wonder sandboxes include them so often. Some games use different types of crafting stations too, so you need to either find or craft the ability to craft itself. Then you likely get into progression trees that make more and more powerful equipment with the materials you collect. Progression is a great motivator and reward. An example from Minecraft would be crafting an enchanting table to power up your equipment, or in Terraria creating a mithril anvil to replace the basic one. Perfectly reasonable stuff. So why do crafting systems so often not work in games? Well, a crafting system is nothing on its own. It's just a function of inputs and outputs. If the inputs are not fun to collect and the outputs are not compelling, then it doesn't really matter how cool of a minigame you attach to the crafting system, players won't want to use it. So let's consider the inputs first, or rather the crafting ingredients. We could collect them any number of ways. We could pick them up freely from the environment, solve a puzzle and collect whatever is behind a door, defeat a monster and claim whatever it drops, maybe complete a quest and gain it as a reward. There should be some sort of engaging obstacle to obtaining the resource though. If the resource is too easy or mindless to obtain, then why add the extra step of crafting it? So generally a crafting ingredient will be a reward for something the player does, right? Here's the thing though, why would you reward the player with an ingredient instead of the resulting equipment? Ingredients aren't useless since they eventually derive applicability when they're crafted, but why add the extra step? I think a fair answer is to not let the player progress too quickly. If every enemy dropped an already crafted potion, for example, then the potions will lose their value as they get hoarded, and your combat potentially becomes easier than intended. Even more so if you can collect useful equipment whenever you simply chop down a tree or mine a rock. It makes sense to grant small rewards for small actions, and measly crafting ingredients can essentially give a continuous flow of dopamine to the player, without immediately changing the balance of other attached systems, be it combat or whatever the game has. Progression becomes more gradual this way. Okay, so what about the outputs of the crafting system? If we're putting all of this work into collecting the ingredients, the results better be worthwhile. These could be permanent stat upgrades, weapons with new effects, new tools, or even just cool decorative objects. They need some sort of perceived value and purpose though. A weapon is useless if there's no challenging enemies threatening you. New tools are a waste of time if they're not actually different from the previous ones. Additionally, it feels foolish to craft something that can be more easily obtained another way. I don't think anyone in Skyrim crafted an iron sword before they already found one lying around. Frankly, the crafting system must make sense with other systems in the game. Many games will make tools breakable so their scarcity creates continuous value, and that can lead to a lot of tedium. There will be this endless loop of collecting and crafting to get anything done. This exists in successful games like Minecraft, but there is progression that makes the cycle go by faster, and eventually essentially stops once you obtain practically unbreakable equipment. If you are just endlessly crafting stone tools, fighting 2 or 3 monsters in a row with no new equipment in sight, then this endless loop will grow stale. Maybe I'm just hating on open world survival games though. The ones with progression can actually be fun. I believe the key aspects to a successful crafting system are having an end in sight, that being an end goal of a long progression tree, or an end goal of the game entirely, no crafting forever, having a unique utility that is not made useless by other systems in the game, and having an engaging way to obtain crafting ingredients. Of course, even this list is somewhat flawed. My original example of Minecraft doesn't really fit this mold. There's an end goal for weapons and tools, but people will harvest materials and craft building supplies without end, as they create their own goals of things to build forever. Endlessly player-generated goals can only exist in an open sandbox game. If that's the type you want to make, then hell yeah, take some notes. But for crafting systems in other genres, be careful. So let's consider things from my game. It is a 2D action platformer that emphasizes exploration, with its many optional pathways. Does the crafting system fit? I'm biased of course, but here's the justifications that I have thought through. In my game, there's no experience system. Killing enemies does not directly lead you to becoming stronger, so they need to drop something other than EXP to reward the player. They could just drop gold, and they do, but that doesn't really feel like enough. First of all, it's somewhat boring for every enemy just to drop gold, and also gold itself isn't always practical. Let me explain. In the game, you can only spend gold at specific stores that you find in the world. This is fine, but at a certain point as you progress further in the game world, there will be no more stores as you venture further and further away from any civilization. If the player wants to spend their gold, they'll need to manually backtrack to a store, or find a limited teleportation shrine and pay a fee to return. Because of these circumstances, having another way to obtain supplies other than buying them makes sense. Finding crafting ingredients now encourages the player to fight enemies and explore off the beaten path. Of course, there is also a wide array of unique monsters and hazardous terrain to incentivize crafting potions, explosives, and arrows. So just to clarify how I've tried to match with the guidelines we've identified with my own game, the game has a clear end goal and thus motivation for crafting supplies, no endless loop. The crafting system is a reliable option that isn't easily replaced by buying items or other systems. Collecting crafting ingredients isn't mindless and contribute to the core goal of the game, exploration. And there we go. Of course, there's still plenty of playtesting to do to confirm that I have implemented the mechanics sufficiently. If you want to check out the demo of my game and playtest yourself, the itch page is linked below. Anyways, I hope these ideas have helped you figure out how to approach the crafting system in your own game projects, or simply better appreciate the crafting systems in games that actually make them fun and bearable. That's it for this time. I'll talk to you all later.